The frozen hell. Pluto sits 3.7 billion miles from the sun. At that distance, sunlight takes over 5 hours just to arrive, and when it finally does, it's barely there. A clear afternoon on Pluto is about as bright as a full moon on Earth. Not a sunny day, not even a cloudy one. A full moon. That's your best case scenario for daylight on this world. The surface temperature ranges from minus 378 to minus 396 degrees Fahrenheit. To put that in perspective, the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth was minus 128 degrees in Antarctica. Pluto is 3 times colder than that. At those temperatures, the rules of matter completely change. Nitrogen isn't a gas here, it's a solid. It sits on the ground like rock. Carbon monoxide freezes into flat sheets. Methane turns to ice and blankets the terrain like dirty snow. These ices have been baking under cosmic radiation and ultraviolet light for millions of years, transforming from white into an eerie reddish-brown. The entire planet looks like it's been stained with something old and wrong. If you stepped onto the surface without protection, you wouldn't slowly freeze to death. You'd freeze solid, instantly. Your skin, your blood, your bones. Everything locked in place before your brain could register what happened. There would be no shivering, no frostbite, just a statue. And here's what makes it worse. Pluto orbits the sun once every 248 Earth years. A single winter here lasts longer than the entire history of the United States. And right now, Pluto is heading deeper into that winter. It reached its closest point to the sun back in 1989. Since then, it has been drifting farther away, getting colder, getting dark. Every single year, a world that was already one of the coldest places in the known solar system is actively getting worse. Pluto isn't just frozen, it's still freezing, the heart. When NASA's New Horizons spacecraft flew past Pluto in 2015, it sent back an image that no one was expecting. Stamped across the surface of this frozen dead world was a massive heart-shaped feature, bright white, perfectly visible, almost 1,000 miles across. Scientists named it Tombaugh Regio, after Clyde Tombaugh, the man who discovered Pluto in 1930. The internet fell in love with it, but the real story behind the heart is far stranger than a cute shape on a dwarf planet. The left side of the heart is called Sputnik Planitia. It's a basin roughly 620 miles wide and nearly 2 miles deep. Scientists believe it was carved out by a massive ancient impact. Over time, that crater filled with nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane ices. And those ices aren't just sitting there, they're moving. The surface of Sputnik Planitia is divided into giant polygon-shaped cells, each one 10 to 30 miles across. These cells are slowly churning. Warm nitrogen ice rises from below, spreads across the surface, cools down, and sinks again. The whole thing works like a massive lava lamp, except the lava is frozen nitrogen, and the lamp is on a world 3 billion miles from the sun. But here's the part that makes scientists nervous. That heart controls Pluto's entire weather system. As nitrogen ice evaporates in the north and freezes in the south, it triggers winds that blow in the opposite direction of Pluto's spin. No other place in the solar system has weather driven like this. One researcher said it bluntly: if you remove the heart of Pluto, you lose the entire circulation. A dead world with a beating heart that controls its own atmosphere. That's not a metaphor. That's all, it's all what the data actually shows, like the dying atmosphere. If Pluto has an atmosphere, that alone is surprising. A world smaller than Earth's moon, sitting at the edge of the solar system, somehow holds on to a thin shell of gas. It's mostly nitrogen, with traces of methane and carbon monoxide. It extends about 1,860 miles above the surface, but it won't be there for long. Pluto's atmosphere isn't permanent, it's seasonal. When the dwarf planet swings closer to the sun during its 248-year orbit, the surface warms just enough for nitrogen ice to sublimate. It turns directly from solid to gas. That gas rises and forms the atmosphere. But when Pluto moves away from the sun, the process reverses. And the gas gets cold, it freezes, and it falls back down to the surface as nitrogen snow. The sky literally collapses onto the ground. Pluto reached its closest point to the sun in 1989. Since then, it has been drifting farther away, and scientists have been watching the atmosphere respond. In 2018, observations showed the atmospheric pressure had dropped significantly compared to data from the New Horizons flyby in 2015. A study published in Astronomy and Astrophysics predicted that by 2030, the entire atmosphere will have frozen out completely. Every molecule, gone. Just frost on the ground. If that happens, the striking red terrain New Horizons photographed could disappear, buried under a bright layer of nitrogen frost. The planet would look completely different, brighter, whiter, unrecognizable. Think about that. Pluto doesn't just have weather, it has a dying sky, an atmosphere that builds itself up over decades, and then crashes back to the surface in one of the most dramatic ice storms in the solar system. And it's happening right now. Ice volcanoes. Volcanoes on Pluto shouldn't exist. Too small, too cold, too far from any heat source, but they're there, and they're massive. In 2022, scientists confirmed 2 mountains near Pluto's heart region showed all the signs of cryovolcanism, ice volcanoes. The first, Right Mons, stands 3.1 miles tall and stretches 93 miles across, roughly the same size as Mauna Loa, the largest active volcano on Earth. The second, Picard Mons, is even bigger, 4.3 miles tall, 140 miles wide. But these volcanoes don't erupt lava. They erupt slush, a thick, icy mixture of water, nitrogen, and ammonia that oozes from deep beneath the surface and spreads across the terrain. The structures around them are covered in bumpy mounds that look like nothing scientists have ever seen on any other world. Not on Saturn's moon Titan. Not on Neptune's moon Triton. Nothing comes close. And here's what really puzzles scientists. These features show almost no impact craters. That means the surface is geologically young, maybe 1 to 2 billion years old. Something inside Pluto was generating enough heat to melt ice and push it to the surface long after the planet should have gone completely dead. Nobody fully understands how. A frozen dwarf planet at the edge of the solar system with active geology. That wasn't supposed to happen. Razor blade terrain. On Pluto's equator, there's a region called Tartarus Dorsa. From above, it looks like snakeskin. Up close, it looks like a nightmare. Stretching across hundreds of miles are towering blades of frozen methane, each one roughly 500 meters tall, spaced about 3 to 5 kilometers apart. Rows and rows of jagged spikes rising out of the surface like a field of giant razor blades. Nothing like this exists anywhere else in the solar system. On Earth, we have a much smaller version of these structures. They're called penitentes. You can find them in the high-altitude snowfields of the Andes. But Earth's penitentes max out at about 3 meters tall. Pluto's are over 150 times larger. They form through a process called sublimation. Methane ice doesn't melt on Pluto. It skips the liquid phase entirely and turns straight into gas. When sunlight hits the surface at certain angles, it carves bowl-shaped depressions into the ice. Those depressions concentrate more light, which deepens them further. Over tens of millions of years, the gaps between the depressions sharpen into tall, narrow ridges. The blades grow about 1 centimeter deeper with every 248-year orbit, slowly, patiently. Like the planet is sharpening its own teeth. New Horizons only imaged one side of Pluto during its flyby, but infrared data suggests the bladed terrain wraps around most of the equator. That means there could be thousands more of these structures on the side we haven't even seen yet. The hidden ocean. Beneath Pluto's frozen surface, there might be liquid water. That sounds impossible. A world where the surface temperature is nearly minus 400 degrees. Fahrenheit shouldn't have anything liquid anywhere, but the evidence keeps building. It started with Sputnik Planitia. That massive heart-shaped basin sits almost exactly on the opposite side of Pluto from its largest moon, Charon. Statistically, there's only a 5% chance that's a coincidence. Scientists believe the basin is so heavy with nitrogen ice that it dragged Pluto's entire crust around to its current position. They call it true polar wander. But for the math to work, there needs to be something soft and fluid beneath the ice shell. Something that allowed the crust to slide. A subsurface ocean fits perfectly. On the far side of Pluto, scientists found chaotic terrain, a jumbled mess of cracked ridges and broken plains sitting directly opposite Sputnik Planitia. That's exactly what you'd expect if a massive impact sent shockwaves straight through the planet's interior. Liquid water would transmit those waves differently than solid ice. The pattern matches. If this ocean is real, it changes everything. It means liquid water can exist billions of miles from the sun. It means oceans in the outer solar system might be common. And it means even the smallest, coldest, most forgotten worlds might have the one ingredient life needs most, the Hulk moon. Pluto's largest moon, Charon, is half the size of Pluto itself. No other moon in the solar system comes that close to its parent body in proportion. They're so evenly matched that they don't orbit the way normal moons do. They orbit each other, locked face to face, the same sides always pointing at one another, like two dancers frozen mid-step. But Charon's surface tells a violent story. When New Horizons flew past in 2015, it revealed a moon covered in massive fractures, a belt of canyons stretching at least 1,100 miles across the equator. Some of those chasms plunge 4.5 miles deep. For comparison, the Grand Canyon is 277 miles long and just over a mile deep. Charon's scars dwarf it completely. Scientists believe Charon once had a liquid ocean beneath its surface. When the moon was young, radioactive decay and internal heat kept that water warm enough to stay liquid. But as Charon cooled, the ocean froze, and when water freezes, it expands. The expanding ice pushed outward against the surface like a fist inside a glove. The crust couldn't hold. It cracked, split, fractured across the entire globe. NASA compared it to Bruce Banner ripping his shirt as he transforms into the Hulk. An entire moon torn apart from the inside by its own frozen ocean. Quietly, in the dark, billions of miles from anyone watching. The planet killer vote. For 76 years, Pluto was the 9th planet. Every textbook, every classroom poster, every model of the solar system had Pluto sitting at the end. Then, on August 24, 2006, a room full of astronomers in Prague changed everything. The International Astronomical Union held a vote. They created a new definition of what a planet actually is. A planet must orbit the sun. It must be massive enough for gravity to pull it into a round shape, and it must have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Pluto passed the first two, it failed the third. Its orbit overlaps with Neptune's. It shares its space with thousands of other icy objects in the Kuiper Belt. It hasn't dominated its lane, so they voted, and Pluto was out, reclassified as a dwarf planet. The decision was controversial. Only 424 of the union's nearly 10,000 members were in the room. When the vote happened, many planetary scientists publicly disagreed. The debate still hasn't fully settled, but there's something poetic about the whole thing. Pluto is named after the Roman god of the underworld, the god of death and darkness, a ruler of a cold, forgotten kingdom where nothing living was supposed to exist. And then we sent a spacecraft there and found ice volcanoes, a beating heart, a hidden ocean, a dying atmosphere, a moon cracked open from the inside. Pluto didn't need the title. It was already the most terrifying world in the solar system without it.